Welcome back to Sullivan's Backstage Pass. I'm here with Tommy. Tommy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Sean. It's great to be here with you today.
And I full disclosure, right? So when I first met you was at that party at the Revival Brothers.
Jeff Frankel said.
Yeah. And what I admired about your performance was your control of volume and dynamics. So a lot of horn players don't understand when they have to pull away from the microphone, when they have to push into the microphone, when to have to hold a note and all of that. And I remember like you being so nervous before you took stage. At the same time, the minute you started playing, like, oh, I have to interview this guy. He's so talented. How did you get started in music in the first place?
Piano lessons.
Tell me more.
One of the first things that my mother, the late Helen Marie Prigmore, imparted to all of her children was the love of music. And from the time I guess I was about 6 years old, right around first grade, I started taking piano lessons in San Diego, California, where we lived in Point Loma on Sunset Cliffs Boulevard. In fact, at the time, we were one of the only houses on that entire block. It was great. And Anne, my late sister, she also took piano with me. So we had, we could do duets or whatever. And Anne and I took the piano pretty good. It wasn't challenging or anything like that, but it exposed us to understanding how to read music, how to play music, the concepts of melody and harmony. And I think that's where my love of music was really nurtured first, was with my mother.
And then how did you make the transition from like piano to the horns?
That's an excellent question. And after about 6 years of playing piano, I said, hey, Mom, I've been doing this for 6 years. Any chance you'd support me in trying another instrument? She said, sure. What do you want to try? I said, I want to try the drums. So she got me a drum set after work in a summer in Lake Tahoe. I earned the drum set. That was my salary for the summer, was getting that drum set, because a friend of mine that I'd made up in Tahoe City or Squaw Valley at the time, I think it's called Paradise Tahoe now. He had a drum set that he was selling for like less than $200. So I said, yeah, I'll get my mom. And she said, sure, you work this summer, you got the drum set. So I studied out of the Buddy Rich rudimentary book for like 3 years and really practiced and was totally into it and would play along with records. But at some point in my mind, I said, there's no way I'm going to be carrying around all this stuff for my entire life. And at the time we were living in Las Vegas, my mother was divorced from my father in about 1974, and we moved to Las Vegas then. I was in the 5th grade, and I've been playing drums for about by the time I was in 6th grade, I got interested in trying to learn how to play the saxophone, because a gentleman that was living with us by the name of Gary Lefevre, a former giant with Shorty Rogers and member of the Stan Kenton and Harry James orchestras, was playing for Wayne Newton at the Frontier Hotel, and he was staying in our house with Mom. And Gary is one of those geniuses that you never hear about, but you talk to anybody that's ever played with him, and the first things out of their mouth is world-class musician. And he was an inspiration for me, because he could take a saxophone apart, put it back together, no problem. He was that kind of a genius. Also taught me how to play chess, man, which I thought was cool. So it was great being around that environment, to be exposed to somebody as talented as Gary was. And I thought, this is it for me. Saxophone is my instrument from here on out.
And then as soon as you sort of pick up the saxophone and you made that sort of commitment to being the instrument of choice, was there a certain point along the way that you started to realize that you were being able to not only kind of sort of keep up with your peers, but you could actually outplay some people?
That happened rather quickly for me. I started playing saxophone in the 6th grade band at Matt Kelly's 6th grade center in Las Vegas. I was in the concert band and the marching band. They didn't have a jazz band then. But even then, I think the band director at the time, Dennis Whipple, was starting to see a great potential in me. It wasn't until I attended a middle school, junior high school, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade together at Hyde Park Junior High School, where I came to meet and learn and be taught so well by one Carol Bumgarner, who's married a former band director of mine, also Alan Lewis. So she goes by Carol Bumgarner Lewis. And Miss B she was a graduate of Berkeley, and she went to school with some of the finest musicians in music. And she had a talent for teaching young people how to soothe the savage beast by playing music. And she was stern, she was firm, but she was so fair. One of the fairest teachers I've ever had in my life. And I think being under her tutelage and being in her bands really pumped me up for trying to be a professional musician, because at the age of 15, when I was a ninth grader, we played our first professional gig on the Strip at the Holiday Inn for some convention that was in town that she had booked for the band to raise money for us to go to the Reno International Jazz Festival. So that was really her. I give a lot of credit to her, but I have so many teachers after that too. One of which was Garvin Bushell Sr., who's a member of Fletcher Henderson's band. And his son is still alive. And Gar Jr., he played the trumpet, and he's still a good friend of mine. I talked to him on Facebook and stuff. And this cat was like 80 years old and drove a Corvette. Candy apple red. Dude was slick. But one of the best teachers I ever had, and imparted to me a lot of professional behaviors and attitudes and ways of playing the instrument that I hadn't considered before through my other teachers. So that was in Vegas too, before I graduated high school. He was my last teacher before I moved on to Bakersfield College, where I played there with Doc Woods. And boy, that was a good experience, because my buddy Joe Triscari was there. I was telling you about Joe last night. His uncle Joseph Triscari and his other uncle Ray Triscari were both fabulous trumpet players. And I got to play with the marching band, the concert band, and the jazz band. And that was stellar. I'm skipping over something that's important, though, and that is with Carol's band, because my sister was in that band, and that's my late sister, Ann, who I consider the best musician in the family. And Ann was going to go to Europe with the Hyde Park Junior High School Jazz Band while I was a sophomore at Clark High School, playing in the Clark High School bands. And their tenor player couldn't go because his mother wouldn't let him. So Ms. B comes up to me one day and says, "Tommy, I understand you got a passport." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I do." Because I'd been helping my sister and all the rest of the band raise money by going to the casinos and asking for donations to fund this trip. So I'd been a part of the process, and I'd been in that band the prior year after they won the Reno Jazz Festival the following year, and with my sister's band in it. Again, another reason why I credit my sister as being the number one musician in our family. Anyhow, I got to play in Europe with the Hyde Park Junior High School Jazz Band as a senior, as a sophomore from Clark. And a buddy of mine from Bonanza High School, a trombone player who was a junior at the time, he got to play with the band too, to fill up a spot. So the band had pretty much everybody that was at the Reno International Jazz Festival, where they won in competition. They won the sweepstakes, which meant they got to play in the Pioneer Theater, which was a big thing back then, because Vegas bands didn't always get there. And Izzy was at the party too, for Jeff Franco's party. He's a former youth community music director for the city of Cincinnati. And he's moved out here to Portland, and it's going to be out here, and he's got a youth symphony that he's working on, and I'm really excited about participating with him in that when that starts to come together soon over the next 6-7 months.
But how cool would that experience be, right? To be able to fly over to a different country as a sophomore and just play in front of people from a different continent? How cool is that?
As sophomore in high school? Yeah, that was super cool. We were exposed to things and sights and sounds and customs and cultures that none of us had ever seen before in Vegas. I mean, we may have, there may be some aspects of our heritage that they could bring with them, but I mean, it was an education unto itself, for sure. And I was grateful to be a part of it because, wow, my sister and I, we could say that we played the Montreux Jazz Festival and the North Sea Jazz Festivals when we were in high school and junior high school.
So where were these festivals?
The Montreux Jazz Festival was in Switzerland on Lake Geneva. And there's a sidebar to that after I tell you this one. And the second one was the North Sea Jazz Festival in The Hague in Holland, the Netherlands. And I kind of preferred the North Sea Jazz Festival to the Montreux Jazz Festival for one reason and one reason only. Basie was playing the Montreux Jazz Festival, and I got to meet Count Basie for the first time afterwards because I went on to the bus and I asked if he'd come back to the dressing room and sign autographs for this junior high school band that was there. I just went up there because I knew the lead tenor player was a good friend of mine, Kenny Hing, and a good friend of my mother that used to come over to the house all the time and jam. And the trombone player, one of the trombone players, was Phil Wilson, who went to school with Carol Baumgartner, who was the director. So I told her she was there, and she said, yeah, go tell him, Phil, I'm a former classmate. And she looked up and said, Carol Baumgartner, or Carol, whatever her maiden name was, I can't remember. But she's here? I said, yeah, she's right up there. And she was waving down, and she saw it. That was a really cool moment.
That?
Yeah, he signed autographs for all the musicians that were there. Everybody in the band followed me because they knew I was going to go get Count Basie's signature autograph. And while Count Basie is doing that, after getting off the bus, who walks in but Ella Fitzgerald?
Oh,
So I'm looking at two masters, and the kids know who Ella is, so they're going over there and trying to get her autograph, but her manager's with her, and he says, no, you guys, she got to go on stage, so maybe later. And that was another really cool moment of that trip, you know.
and then you get back and you come back to the high school band. And we were talking yesterday, and you were telling me a little bit about your decision to leave Vegas and do something different. And you went on an audition. Can you sort of talk about that story?
I
Because
can.
that was fascinating.
When I was a senior in high school, Doc Woods knew that I wanted to go to Bakersfield College. And at the time, he needed a baritone saxophone player to take his college band to the Reno International Jazz Festival, same one that my sister's band won the year before, whatever that was. That was pretty awesome. Anyhow, and he said, and it was through Joe Triscari because he's the one that called me. He said, hey, man, we need a Barry player. Can you come on down and travel with us for a week? I said, well, hell yes, I will do that. And I knew once I told my mother, she said, yeah, go. It's audition for our college. That's legit. And I did. And I got to play 2 shows with them. One was in Lodi, California at a high school, and the other was in the Pioneer Theater at the Reno International Jazz Festival with the Bakersfield College Jazz Band. And what was cool about that was the band director at UNLV, University of Nevada at Las Vegas at the time, was Frank Gagliardi. And he was one of the adjudicators for the bands that were playing, especially the college level bands. And he knows my mother. So when he saw that my name was on the program and I was playing Barry sax, he asked himself, what the hell is Tommy Prigmore playing with a college band when he's still a senior in high school? And told my mother at one point, he said that one of his regrets was not being able to go there. And that's one of my regrets too. I wanted to go to UNLV and study music, but I had to get out of Las Vegas because I didn't want to get sucked into playing in a strip band because that's not the kind of musical career I wanted to have for myself. And that's when, I tried out for the Navy band because my father and brother were in the Navy, and the Navy band said, you're pretty good, but you're just not Navy material yet. And I said, okay. He says, yeah, just study up on your scales a bit. Come back in 6 months, probably get a spot. And I can remember being crushed and disappointed that I didn't make the grade. But I said to myself, okay, hey, dude, it's the music industry. You're going to have setbacks. Deal with it and move on. So I did. And about a year later, after I was spending some time with my brother Dave here, he I got another call from Joe Triscari. Called me and said, hey, I'm going to join up with the Air Force Band. Why don't you audition? They need a lot of sax players. I said, oh, hell yeah. Let's go do that. So I drove on a bus down to where Joe was in Tehachapi, and I auditioned at March Air Force Base. And they liked my audition because I played with the jazz band. I did a private audition. And the guy that auditioned me was a lot older and a lot different than the cat from the Navy. And uh, this guy said, you have a really good sound. We just want to see if you can get your scales a little bit better. So they said, take a week, do the scales, come back, audition, and I think you'll make it. So I just studied scales for a week, every one of them. And when I came back, I played them all cold. And yep, you're ready. Okay. And that was the requirement to audition. I had to play with the jazz band, play with the concert band, I don't think I played with the concert band. I think I just had a private audition with one of the reed players. I can't remember his name. I know he was a senior master sergeant at the time, though. And he said, yeah, we're going to take you. Where would you like to go? I said, where's the farthest base away from Las Vegas? And they said, well, Langley Air Force Base is on the East Coast. I said, that's perfect for me. I'll take that spot. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But wow, that was a great choice for me because that band was stellar and made history.
And one of the things I appreciated about our conversation last night too was your rationale for joining the military in the beginning. Because like when you talk to people who join the military, you usually get this default answer like, I just wanted to be a soldier. Like your response was so unique and is perfect for like how I view the world. Why did you join the military band?
Because I wanted to play more than one style of music. I wanted to play all styles of music. I wanted to have a musical career that would allow me to be the best saxophone player, musician that I could be. And by going in the Air Force at such a young age, that gave me that golden opportunity. Because once I got there, it's not easy to stay there. And I was playing with individuals that had bachelor's, master's, and even some had doctorates in music where I was just out of high school, little college. By little college, I mean 2 semesters. So it wasn't even a whole year before I left Bakersfield College and decided to transition into the military. And I come from a long line of warriors. Mother and father were in the Navy. Brother was in the Navy. All of my uncles were in the military on both sides of the family. One was killed after the end of World War II. That was my Uncle Billy. And that's who Dave, my brother's named after, actually. And I just thought to myself, these people did a lot of great things in their generation. How am I going to live up to that? And somewhere, something out of the blue hit me, said, why don't you try something different and promote peace through your music? And I thought to myself, yeah, that's what I'll do. Because that I can still honor the heritage, but at the same time, I can be doing things with my life and my music that will promote peace. And that was very important to me.
And I appreciated the conversation we had and the talk about that. You had a performance in front of a refugee camp?
Corregidor, indeed, in the Philippines. The band had a dual mission, especially the Band of the Pacific in the Philippines at Clark Air Base. Their dual mission was to support the military presence at Clark Air Base and support any other branches that their musical performing group was unavailable. We'd cover for them. Like if there was a Navy change of command that the Navy band couldn't do, we'd figure out a way to get in there and do that. So that was the first mission, was support the military op. And the second one was the public affairs and goodwill by playing off base. And those were always the greatest gigs for me, was the off base gigs, because the people were just extraordinarily grateful for the music. And seeing those people on Corregidor really brought it home for me on what I was doing in trying to promote peace, because they were from all over, Cambodia, Vietnam, what have you, places where in their world they couldn't live a normal life because their lives were always threatened by whoever was dictating government at the time. And you could see in their eyes and their faces and their body language. And it was unlike any other performance I've ever done. And I still see those haunting faces. And I pray to God that they all made it to the United States and are living fruitful lives now.
And I can only imagine, like, because I remember, and we had that conversation with me talking about Saran, and the most profound thing he said to me about being in the refugee camp, it was heaven, even though conditions were kind of deplorable.
Right.
And so I appreciate that the military took those steps to bring something positive to these people that are suffering. So even though you look at the faces and you may not see that reaction instantaneously, I would imagine later on in life, they're going to look back at that, and at least it was a respite
I would hope.
from what they were going through.
I would hope. I really would.
And then so you transition out of the military. And then
that was hard.
Yeah?
Because it was a medical discharge.
I can relate to that.
I know you can. You told me your story last night, and I was grateful to hear that because I had no idea you were a veteran. In fact, I got my Army Cup with me.
I love it.
Got that in a golf tournament. Getting out of the military was difficult because it ended my military music career. And I was crushed by that for a few years. I was. But I had to figure out a way to find myself another path, another journey to do the things that I wanted to do with still music. And at the same time, support my family because I had just gotten married in the Philippines for the first time. I was a young 24-year-old. I had some good credentials and good resume. Musically speaking, for my background, I recorded 2 top-notch albums with the 564th Air Force Band at Langley Air Force Base, also known as the Tactical Air Command Band. And those 2 albums were Standard Bearers of Excellence and Igor Stravinsky's Le Sacre du Printemps, The Rite of Spring. And it was the first concert band transcription ever done in history for that piece. And we debuted it at the Music Educators Convention in Virginia Beach right before I got orders to the Philippines. And that was history. Another history with that band, I don't know if you remember in 81 that the Thunderbirds crashed and they lost their demonstration team in the range there where they all did a boom, 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 follow the leader because it was the Delta 4 planes. And the commanding officer for Tactical Air Command at the time was General Wilbur Creech, who was a former Thunderbird. And it was his plan after that happened to make sure that the Thunderbirds came back. Well, the Thunderbirds are based at Nellis Air Force Base, and I used to see them flying over the skies of southern Nevada as a youngster. So my first gig with the Air Force was at the recommissioning ceremony for the United States Air Force Thunderbirds demonstration team. That was history for me because I'd seen these planes, I'd seen them do their demonstrations, and here I am being a part of that. You know, that's everybody wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. Well, you get bigger than that, man. I love the Thunderbirds, and I love the Blue Angels too because I see them all the time too, being a Navy child. Yeah, so yeah, those are 2 really good gigs in the military. So I had that in my background, and then I just sought out opportunities to play in the area I was, which was Seattle. And the first really cool gig that I picked up on was playing with a high school pep band. And that was the O'Day High School pep band. I got to play with them for 4 years. And the reason I got to play with them was because the band director of O'Day High School at the time was a really good friend of my brother Mike's. And he was a brother to Pat Robel. Billy Robel was Mike's friend on the football team. And Pat was the music director at O'Day High School. And I asked Pat, I said, hey, do you think it'd be okay if I just joined you guys and played? He said, come on, Tommy. Yeah, let's go. So they'd feature me on old time rock and roll and anything else that had a saxophone on it, take a little ride. You know, it was really cool. And I got to be with young people and share my knowledge at that time, you know, and that I felt that was a good outlet for the angst and frustration that I had not being able to continue my military career.
And how did your connection with Dr. Zoom surface?
Now, that was a big break for me. And I ran into Melanie Roy because my brother would frequent an establishment. This is Mike now. Mike also passed in 2006 with my younger sister, Ann. Ann had primary sclerosing cholangitis, and Mike had diabetes, adult diabetes type 2, and he died from complications from that. And Mike patronized a little establishment called the Monkey Pub. and that's in the Roosevelt University district there, and you probably know where the Monkey Pub is, being a former graduate of UW. Go Huskies.
Yep.
Um, and Melanie would frequent that establishment with her boyfriend, Jesse. So somehow Melanie and I got into conversation about music, and she found out I was a sax player. And at the time, she was playing in a band called Adrian's Confused. And another person in that band was Brett Glidewell, who also became a bandmate with Dr. Zoom. And then I had my surgery, and I had to have a subtotal colectomy because my Crohn's disease, which is why I was medically discharged from the Air Force, had gotten to such a point that they had to remove some of it. In fact, 90% of my colon was removed in January of 97, I believe it was. And the next year, they took out the last part of it. So I'm completely without a colon. Just call me Tommy Prigmore, man without a colon. But getting back to the point with Melanie, it's that Melanie was always there at the Monkey Pub, and we'd started these conversations. She said, Tommy, maybe you should come and play with Adrian's Confused sometime. I said, anytime you want me to come, Mel, I'll be happy to. So I did. I ended up playing with Adrian's Confused one night at, I guess it used to be Teeny Biggs. I can't remember. It was called the Romper Room. That's what that place was called at the time that I gigged with Adrian's Confused. It was right there close to the Seattle Center Coliseum, which is now Climate Pledge Arena. And man, that was cool. Because I got to finally meet with some gigging musicians in Seattle. And from there, after I had my surgery, I came back to start rehearsing with Dr. Zoom. And we had new members. We had a new drummer. We had a new guitar player. And it was 6 of us. It was Andreas Stoller, Will Forbes, Brett Glidewell, John Bartlink, Melanie Roy, and myself. And Melanie wrote the music with Dr. Zoom, most of the lyrics, and the rest of the guys in the band pretty much wrote their own parts, including myself. I did all the horn parts for that. But that was a moment in Seattle history because we were playing at the time, the same time that Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, all those bands were really big. Mudhoney. And we were like second tier below them, because we were doing a lot of gigs in Seattle while they were touring on the road. So that opened up a lot of spots for us to play at places they used to play. So yeah, Dr. Zoom still lives today because Spider Lounge, a band that Andreas, Brett, front are in, along with some really stellar musicians in a band I used to play in, but haven't played with them for about 3 years. They still do one of Dr. Zoom's songs, and it's really cool. It's Wandering Man, and they just do an instrumental version of it. It's fabulous. So that's how I got into Dr. Zoom.
And then after Dr. Zoom rounded up, like what happened with your musical career after that?
Well, Dr. Zoom kept going for about 97 until about 2000. So like 2000, 2001 is when we stopped being a band. And we tried other musicians to come in, and we did some recordings, and we got some good music off of it, but we just didn't gel together as staying together as a band. And, so many bands have that history about them, you just never know what's going to happen. You just got to go with the flow. But the time that I was in Dr. Zoom was some of the best musical experiences I had because we played so many gigs, so many clubs. We got on a compilation CD with, I forget the band that the Sisters from Heart did. They did a side project that they were the top track on, but it was a Seattle Peace Concert CD that Don Glenn used to do every year until he passed. And yeah, I love being with Dr. Zoom. And moreover, I still get to play with Andres and Brett and John Bartlink because they still live in Seattle. So we play a lot of open mics and play gigs and parties together. So I still keep connected with my folks in Dr. Zoom. And Will Forbes, too, who lives in California. I still really tight with him.
And one of the things that I respect about your playing is your attention to sort of like when you open that volume and dynamics. How important is that from a musician's perspective to keep in mind, especially somebody who's playing a horn or a saxophone?
Well, unless the saxophonist is the focal point, it's really a supporting instrument to a vocalist or the ensemble band. being that I was classically trained in piano and saxophone and learning all the ins and outs of dynamics and understanding musical terminology, that opened up a whole new world for me too, because the first instrument I picked up was a soprano saxophone. That's my first love. I did my professional career a lot with alto and tenor, but I always go back to soprano because I can play soprano anywhere, acoustic, electric, it doesn't matter. I can find a niche. Now, with regard to dynamics and style and how to find your niche, supporting an artist or artists, you have to listen. And it all comes down to those 3 T words we were talking about last night. Temperance, talent. What was the third one? It was
Tenacity, I think.
no, it was temperance, talent, and I can't remember. It'll pop up to me if I forget about it. Those 3 T's, you know, they give you an idea of how to balance yourself within an ensemble or group and to make other people the star. You know, let them shine. Don't get in their way. Like, I hate stepping on vocalists' lyrics. I want to be filling in that spot that's got a little space. That'll just add a little sauce and make the whole experience for everyone better. So then when they walk away, they go, wow, man, that was something. That's one of the things that's in my mind when I'm playing with people is I'm always constantly listening. Where is it that I can play, that I can fit in and, you know, have that perfect niche that, wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's that approach of being complimentary, but also shining.
You know, you get your moments to shine. And when you get them, take advantage of them because sometimes they're far and few. So there are times when I'll turn it up, especially if it's electrified. That's when I bring out the alto and tenor because it's really hard for me to compete with all those guitars on stage, especially if I'm on the back on a mic. So I usually play alto and tenor with the electric groups, which works good because I'm a screamer on both horns, and I like to jam with the guitar players who are always so technically efficiently talented. I mean, I played with some scary guitar players, not unlike those guys in the Revival Brothers bands. Those guys are wicked awesome, wicked.
And I like to say to people like like the piece that I appreciate the most from that band in particular is you have 2 guitarists and they sound like they're playing the same time at the same instrument, the same note at the same speed. That is just like amazingly unheard of.
I'd agree, Sean, but what's even more astounding to me is that there's 2 drummers. You know, you may think that 2 drummers is excess, but if you got the right 2 drummers, they're in sync with one another, that's when the magic happens. And both Jerry and Jeff kill it. And yeah, Andrew and Freddie, those guys are monster scary on their guitars.
And Timmer on bass. Oh,
Timmer is smooth, man. He is Mr. Smooth on the bass. He finds his niche amongst those guitar players, and he just sets that tempo and that groove so well that it's hard to fuck up. You know, we're grooving the Allman Brothers, and it's so tight. In fact, wasn't there something that you wrote on your Facebook where you said something about somebody couldn't figure out if those were real Allman Brothers band? AI got
I was flagged for copyright.
Right?
I tried to appeal, saying that no, this is not the Allman Brothers. This is the Revival Brothers, and they're playing a tribute to the Allman Brothers. And AI came back saying you're lying. This is the Allman Brothers in a previously recorded Allman Brothers concert. AI does not believe that the Revival Brothers are a band. They believe that it's the Allman Brothers. And that was just totally blew me away. But I want to circle back to like one of the things though, while you're on stage, right? And one of the things I love to ask artists that come through is as you're playing music and you're looking out in the crowd, what are some of the things that you're looking for that will let you know that the crowd is getting into your music?
There's some things that I'm looking for in the crowd, and I'm looking to see if people are being entertained. I'm looking to see if they're having a good time. I'm looking to see if maybe we're touching their heart. And I do that by listening and watching and focusing in while I'm playing on their facial expressions. Are they on their phones? Are they talking? Are they dancing? Are they singing along? What's their vibe? And that's the kind of way I try to read the room, if you will, as a musician. And I play to that most of the time. I'm playing to the audience based on what I see. And there's something else when I'm playing is I've always felt that I just want to reach one person. And if I can reach one person, I feel like I've succeeded in my effort for that afternoon. And it never fails. Somebody always comes up to me after a gig and says, wow, you guys are really good. You were well rehearsed. You played. We just loved the performance. And that's all the vindication I really need, and that happens more than it doesn't. I'll just say that.
And you bring up a good point, right? And I'm going to repeat this again on the podcast. I repeat it like a million times, but until I stop hearing it, I'm going to repeat it because I'm a watcher of the audience. And I will hear people in the crowd say that they loved the show, but they're so nervous to go up to the artists that have coming off stage and saying how much they appreciate it. From your perspective, why is it important that people know that you are accessible afterwards and that you actually want this sort of feedback?
That's a really great question. And I'm the kind of cat, hey, you want to come and talk to me after a show? I'm not going to turn you away. I'm not going to say, yeah, I'm not that kind of person. I want to talk to whoever was listening, ask them, hey, did you like the show? And I'm always being attentive to constructive criticism, especially from people that have heard a performance. And if you give them the opportunity to tell you that, they will, especially pro musicians that come and hear me play. I love to hear from sax players that come up and said, what setup you got on your horn there? I said, yeah, I got a Selmer mouthpiece, got a Rico Roll Reed, yeah. Are those all Selmer horns? I said, yeah, they're all Selmer horns, yeah. I mean, I'm proud to show them off and talk to people about them and stuff. So I wish that people wouldn't feel that there's that barrier, that there's that black curtain or whatever, because what Chuck was saying about the story about Prince, when you got Prince by himself, he was a pretty cool dude. But when he was around his handlers, maybe, I could see where Chuck Todd?
Yep.
It said that, I don't know about that Prince, and then afterwards, after he met him, he said, yeah, he's a pretty cool dude. And Chuck said, dude, you were just dogging on him 10 minutes ago. I thought that was funny. But, I think that audiences sometimes feel that because they were a musician that, they really don't want to talk. And most musicians that I met, they'll talk. Another way. So please, folks, if you're out there listening to this and you see me play, come on up. I'll talk to you. Glad to.
And then talk about the importance of, because I find this especially the case when you're talking about like marching bands and like bands like you're talking about that you were in. How important is it, and this is for the young musicians out there, that you take this approach of collaboration and professionalism when you're working with a band environment?
Well, in a musical surrounding environment, if you're playing solo, duet, trio, quartet, on and on up to the big orchestra, there's always going to be that opportunity to partner with whoever it is you're playing with, to find that symbiosis, to find that magic that happens organically when musicians play together. And listening is critical. You have to listen. In order to be able to play any instrument, you have to listen to what's going on around you, within you, amongst you, and hear your part in that. You hear it by playing the music on the sheet or hearing what's in your head and what you feel in your heart and your technical ability to find that niche that you can join it with an ensemble and become a part of something greater than greater than yourself. And I think young people really get that today, especially young people that are involved in music, because having that background has helped me in so many other areas of my life. Understanding that I got a left side and a right side of the brain and how to manage and work both of them equally. Music does that for us. And I would encourage young people today that want to get into music, whether or not they want to have a career into it, just come of it from a place of love and wanting to share that love with the world. Because that's what I do with my music. I play for anybody. I play for nobody. I've played for dead birds because it's important to me, and that's my value. And if we're not on this life to provide love to each other, I don't know what the hell we're doing here.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. And it is one of the things that I love about music, because if you think about it, it's a miracle on stage.
Many times it is.
Yeah. Because if you think about like just the 5 people, all with different instruments, all with different stories in their lives, different energy winks, but for some odd minutes and some odd seconds, everybody in the band and the audience is one.
They meld. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's where the magic really happens. And I've seen it at live performances. I've been part of it. I've done gigs in Hawaii that, you knew you were big time. It may not have been, the Fillmore or Madison Square Garden or any of the great places to play, Carnegie Hall, but man, it felt like it when you were playing it at the time. The Waikiki show was pretty sweet, man. When we did a couple of gigs with the Band of the Pacific there, they loved us there.
And if you think back at some of the venues and some of like the shows and concerts that you've put on, do any of them like stand out as like you couldn't believe this actually happened?
Yeah. I was playing with a cat by the name of Marvin Glover, who has done some recording on Starving Dog Records, his company, and he's a movie director, producer now. He's in the film in Hollywood, and he's put out some award-winning work in that arena. But Marvin's a singer-songwriter. He plays guitar, and he asked me to, while I was playing with Dr. Zoom, because he'd heard Dr. Zoom, and he asked me to play on his albums. So I said, sure, man, tell me what you want to do. So I just went in and recorded them. I like to think of myself as one take Tommy, but some of those I'd never heard before. And I just had to hear them a couple of times and then figured out what worked well and did some really good work there. And Marvin wanted to do a benefit for the Thailand tsunami. And we did that in Gig Harbor. And we all signed a guitar that Marvin had provided. And we, I think we got about $1,500 for it in an auction. And, it wasn't a big audience, but because we knew we were playing for people in Thailand to help them out because of that tsunami, which happened on my birthday, believe it or not, December 27th. I'll remember that. Yeah, that was another really good gig. Another gig that I remember as a really young kid was when my late brother Joseph played with Bill Evans. And that was a concert that my mother put on in San Diego, California, in Mission Valley at the Masonic Temple. And that started at midnight so that all the other pro musicians could go to the show because they were gigging. So if you'd have done it at 8 o'clock, all the guys that wanted to see Bill Evans play wouldn't have been able to make it. And I think his bass player, Eddie Gomez, was doing a gig in LA at the time and had to come to San Diego after his gig. So Bill asked my brother if he wouldn't mind sitting in and playing the first set before Eddie got there. Because I asked my brother, I said, Joseph, tell me who you've played with, some cats. He says, well, I played with Bill Evans. I said, when the hell did you play with Bill Evans? He says, yeah, man, I did that concert in San Diego that Mom put on. And I thought, man, I was at that show and I didn't even realize you were playing. I was 8 years old. It was midnight. I was barely able to stay awake, but I can appreciate now that moment that I had there, seeing that my brother was playing bass and not even realizing it, maybe at the time, but damn, because he was the second best musician in the family. Ann was the first, Joseph's the second. I consider myself the third, with Dave a close fourth behind me.
And so I'm curious. So, like, what is it about playing the saxophone that you love the most?
There's a lot of freedom playing the saxophone. A lot of opportunity for playing soft, loud. There are many things that the saxophone can do. It's a very versatile instrument. I love that you can play classical and jazz and rock and all the different genres of music, even bluegrass. I've gone to Tennessee, where my family's from, and sat in with a bluegrass group with my soprano. and just been right in the pocket with them. No problem. Just tell me the key and I'm there, baby. And I love bluegrass. I do. That speaks to my soul. Celtic music speaks to my soul because my middle name is Kerwin and I'm part Irish, and there's a strong Irish person inside of me that, you know, has that going for me too, So yeah.
And then how about why you love playing on stage, right? Some people love playing music, but I get the idea that you enjoy being on stage performing in front of people. What is it about that live performance that keeps you coming back?
Music is a language that transcends all barriers. And it doesn't matter what language people speak. It doesn't matter where they're from. There's a common element there about the joy and peace of music that one can enjoy. When I'm on stage, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that in myself as I'm playing my instrument. I'm looking to impart that to the audience and seeing if they can't feel that as well. And you have to be genuine. You have to be real. You cannot counterfeit the emotion that you emit playing an instrument. That's how you nab the audience and keep them here in the palm of your hand from the first note to the last. Is you're emoting while you're playing. And boy, audiences pick up on that lickety split.
Yeah.
Sure they do.
And then one of the things I also love to talk to our musicians about is the muse. Because the muse is really, like, I think, a living and breathing thing. And when the muse visits you and you get an idea for music, how do you capture that?
That's interesting. The muse comes in and out of my sphere when you least expect it. And one of the things that I love to do, and Chuck Barber talked about it in his interview, listening to the sounds of nature and seeing if you can't find a little symphony or a little piece or a little, lick, if you will, that you can add to your repertoire. I steal most of my good licks from guitar players. Not ashamed to say it, I do. Way more than saxophone players, but I use a lot of theirs too. I've always been fascinated by the guitar. I've always been fascinated by the versatility of the instrument in terms of the genres of music it can play. And some of my favorite musicians, jazz musicians, are guitar players. Wes Montgomery, for sure. His brother Monk was a pioneer of the bass, electric bass, and he was one of my mentors in Las Vegas when he was president of the Las Vegas Jazz Society, where my mother was on the board. She had a jazz club called the Jazz Room in Las Vegas. So I got to be around a lot of pro musicians that taught me a lot. And they taught me about, look, if you're going to be a musician, you're asking for a really hard life. But you're going to have the opportunity to meet and see a lot of things, a lot of people, and share with them your talent, your love of music. And when I'm on stage, man, I really want that bad. I want it bad. And with regards to the muse, I think that's when the muse really hits me, is when I'm on stage and playing. That's where a lot of my ideas come up. Yeah, I use stuff that I've learned, but I'm always looking for new, refreshing things, not playing the same things over and over again, but having the same impact to the audience. So I'm not a songwriter. I've only really collaborated on one song with my brother, and that was Broken Hearted Blues that I performed at Seattle Central Community College in a talent show. Dave saw that, and he said I was robbed. He said I should have won. But it's cool. I was older back then, and I didn't even expect to win. It was my brother, Mike, and Dave were in the audience, and I wanted to do that tune because Mike and I recorded together, and I gave him credit before I sang it in the audience. So that was good. Yeah. Muse. Chuck's right. It's a living, breathing thing.
And if you don't capture it, and the part that's fascinating to me is that song by Jack Black, the most perfect, the best song in the world.
Yeah.
But this is just a tribute.
Yeah.
One of the lyrics in that song is like, "This is nothing, sounds nothing like the song we played because we forgot."
Right.
And if you don't capture
Tenacious D?
Yeah. And so if you don't capture the muse when she visits you, sometimes like you never get it back.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which has got to be an odd feeling.
Well, it's just one of those hit or miss. You don't know if you weren't paying attention to the muse at the time and you lost it, or will it come back? A lot of things for me, if I don't I know a lot of folks write stuff down, but I'm pretty good about keeping stuff in my head rather than writing it down. I learned accountancy and accounting once I got out of the military, and that's how I had a day job and could support my music. So details are very important to me, of course, as a musician, but that served me well in accountancy as well. So, yeah.
And there's no wrong way, right? Whatever way works for you as a musician is the way it works for you.
People find their muse and have a relationship with their muse in different ways than other people do. And I granted, maybe the muse hasn't hit me as hard as it has hit other people yet. And I'm waiting for that big moment because I still have two major things I want to do. I want to do my classical album where I just play classical pieces on alto saxophone. And I want to do a jazz album where I do pieces featuring all three of my horns. So yeah, I might even do that with the classical. I don't know. There's so many great saxophone pieces out there I'd like to record.
Well, if that happens and you have an album release party, you better let me know.
I will. You'll be on the VIP
I will
list.
not miss that for the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's bring your brother in.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. Good.
We've already been at this for almost an hour,
transition.
so it's perfect. Yeah. So here, Dave, let's move the water over to the other side. And then we'll switch the microphone, just point it towards whoever's going to speak. So, Dave, how did you get started in music?
Boy, there's an interesting question. My sister Mary had something to do with that. So she was the oldest sibling, and she played a little bit of guitar. So I bought a guitar and just started playing chords and then singing. And then I played in, I was in Gulf Shores, Alabama, and played in a little club called the Sand Dollar with one of the guys that I was in construction with. So in the daytime, I was pounding nails with a hammer. And at night, on the weekends, I played at this small club. So it was just two guys, two guitars, and we had a really big following because we played harmonies together. We were singing songs by the Eagles and America. And then, so the girlfriend that I had at the time, Mary Jo Zincon. Mary Jo was working at the big house at Gulf Shores State Park. And I booked us the duet a night to open up for a guy who was a famous local musician, a blind guy. And my duet partner bailed on me. He says, no, Dave, I can't play in front of that many people because it was going to be like 500 people in this room. And so I taught Mary Jo 4 of our songs, and she learned the melody and I sang the harmony. And because she worked there, all of her fellow workers showed up too. So it was like standing room only, and Mary Jo pulled it off. And so I realized then that it was going to be difficult to keep a girlfriend and to stay in the music business.
Yeah.
So that's how I got started, and that's how I got out.
Now, you two grew up around music, right? Because your mom sort of had a jazz club. Like, how impactful was that to be surrounded by music at such a young age?
Oh, yeah, that was just Tommy has mentioned Gary Lefevre, and Gary was around quite a bit, and she knew Bill Evans. We went and saw him once at the Lighthouse in Redondo Beach and had breakfast with him at a all-night restaurant afterwards. Great guy. So it was an inspiration to Tommy even more than I, because I could see at a young age he was being surrounded by men and women who were an inspiration to him. And he really is the best in the family. I know he gives credit to Elizabeth, and she was great too. God bless her soul. But Tommy was really the head of the family in music. Mom played the piano, and she was pretty good. So we played with Tom and with Mom and me on guitar and Elizabeth on the flute. And it was fun. It was fun. But having these great musicians around was really the key.
Do you all have like a moment where you were like geeking out because you couldn't believe you met a particular musician that came through?
I don't think so.
You know, in my family, in our family, we were taught to be respectful of everyone. And it wasn't just that we were around all these great people, because we really didn't know them because we were so close, how great and significant they
As
were.
famous musicians.
Yeah, because they were just like friends of Mom, you know, and she taught us to really be Southern gentlemen, all of the boys, you know. We had a standard that we had to behave in public. And if we didn't, the car. I spent dinners in the car because I wasn't behaving, especially at the Red Candle Steakhouse in Mission Valley, San Diego, California.
Yep.
But yeah, I just never, I geeked out one time. I geeked out seeing Buddy Rich. Because I knew who Buddy Rich was, and everybody wanted to talk to Buddy Rich. And my mother pushed her way up there and says, "Buddy, come here. I want you to meet my son, Tommy." Because she knew Buddy. After hanging out with all the other musicians that she did, Buddy would come around every once in a while. And Buddy Rich was in the Harry James Orchestra when Gary was in the band. So Gary and Buddy knew each other. Yeah. Buddy Rich, man, are you kidding me? Greatest jazz drummer ever, man. And he was cool. I mean, he sweated so much after that gig. He had a towel around him, was wiping himself, shook his hand and said, "Mr. Rich, I really enjoyed your show. Thank you so much." Got the hell out of there because 10 people tried to get in there. But it was great. That was really the only geek moment I've had. And I've met a lot of cool people. I have.
Now, Dave, I'm curious, like, if you were to look back at Tommy's career, were there any moments that you were a part of that you really appreciate?
One in particular.
I'll pull that microphone.
And that is when Tommy was making a decision about joining the military. I was living in Sebastopol at the time, and he came to me. And I had already been in the Navy myself and served my 6 years, honorably discharged. And he said, "What do you think, Dave? Have I got what it takes to be in the military?" And I said, "Yeah, Tom, it might be the best decision you've ever made in your life," because it was for me. And so he joined, and well, you've heard the story about Langley Air Force Base and March and being in the Philippines. It was a great move for him. So that's what I would say.
And I was part of a touching moment last night, watching you two play and watching your wife come up and sort of like do that trio piece, and how that must have felt for you all to sort of have that, you know, in light of recent events, of course, but just having that touching moment. Like, those are those backstage pass,
right,
that like I've always like wanted to be a part of.
Right.
And so just to be a part of that, I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that special moment with me.
So welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to do that so that you could have a little taste of that. And I saw the bit that you sent. It was really sweet. It was. And gosh, any chance that I get to play with Dave, I just cherish, you know, because it's a special time. And even though if we struggle a little bit on it, we're still going to support each other to get through the tune. And that's indicative of pros that, you know, because I think Dave may have been a little nervous last night. I don't know. But he normally sings right on key on every note. And
I don't play as much as I used to.
Yeah. And having Dana come up, I just love her. She has a beautiful voice and the talented vocalist in her own right. And being able to share that with the people. And we should offer a little context about the moment, because this trip was going to include our other brother, Joseph. And Joseph passed on August 7th, 2026, the day before the trip was going to start. He died suddenly, unexpectedly. And I was hoping that he was going to be here with us to share his stories, because, man, he has some to tell.
Oh, yeah.
And I could tell the emotions were high. Yeah.
It is. But, you know.
But what a way to celebrate him.
Yeah, he's not suffering anymore. He's at peace. He's with all the other members of our family that have gone before him. And I'm comforted by that. I truly am. And it's helping me get through losing him this week.
I'm comforted by Tommy and Tommy's just love for all the family members, 6 of which are gone now. And so the oldest boy And the
Four,
youngest,
four, four are gone.
well, mom and dad are gone.
Oh, those 6, yeah. Sorry.
That's right. That's
See,
right.
fact checker. Keeping it straight.
So the oldest boy and the youngest boy are still here, and we're still surrounded by the love of our family.
We still have familyhood.
And I'm curious from your perspective too, right? So how important do you think it is for parents to introduce music to children, regardless of the situation?
It's so critical, because not only were we surrounded by their love of music, but also all the people that they knew were coming in and influencing us. I remember a day in Sunset Cliffs when Tommy and Aunt Elizabeth, the two youngest, myself and my mom, were on the piano and the saxophone and the flute and the guitar singing A Shadow of Your Smile.
Are you sure that was in Las Vegas?
No, that was in San Diego.
I never played saxophone then. Not in San Diego. I didn't start taking up saxophone until Las Vegas. Remember she had that grand piano in that first room there? That's where I thought that was.
That's
I remember Shadow of Your
the
Smile.
Yamaha, right?
Oh, yeah. That
Yeah.
was the same piano that was in the jazz club.
Okay, that was it. That's right. That was in Las Vegas. Yeah.
That was a good night, though.
A Shadow of Your Smile. That was when my brother Joseph was getting married.
Yes.
That's right.
And Mom hired a pro jazz band to come in, and she let all the high school students sit in with the band. I mean, it was Carson Smith, Russ Black, and who was the drummer? Was it Tom Montgomery?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, man. Pro musicians on the Strip came in and did a reception party for a couple $100 that Mom gave them. And, man, we got to sit in with them. And they're playing great jazz tunes, great band. And that was a party and a half.
The shout out has to go to my mom
Yeah.
for being the strong influence in musical legacy, musical greats that were coming over and just being friends, being friends of the family.
That's a weird place to be when you're seeing all of these just fabulous names in jazz and music, and you're just going, man, I can't believe Mom knows all these people. You know, that's how I was introduced to seeing that, hey, they may be stars, they may be wealthy, they're just people. They put your pants on the same way you do, Tommy. And that's something that Mother imparted and Father imparted to us that remains with me to today.
And then if you're thinking about the next generation that's coming up, right? And what would you say to people who are just starting in the music industry so that they don't give up? Because it's not the easiest job to be a part of, yet we need young musicians now more than ever. So what advice would you guys give to an up-and-coming musician so that they keep playing the music?
Like anything else in life, there are highs and there are lows. Stick to it. Even when it seems like, oh, I've hit a plateau, I'm not learning anymore, stay with it.
I would just add that if you desire to play a musical instrument or sing or whatever, put your whole heart into it. You know, let that dictate where you go with your music. And if it's something that you're seriously considering about making a career, just accept the fact that you're going to have those ups and downs. And one of the great jazz greats of all time, Miles Davis, said something very significant to me about that. And that is, it doesn't matter if you play a wrong note. What matters is the note you play after that. And dude, he's right. You know, so I would carefully and lovingly impart to those younger musicians out there that music is something that will last with you for your entire life, whether you play or not. If you choose to play, just put your heart into it, put your soul into it and see what happens. And who knows, you could be the next star. And Sean's right. We need young musicians now more than ever.
And the only thing I would add to that too, and that's something that you said along your musical journey, if the first instrument you pick up isn't what you were meant for, try another instrument.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. And so like, as you're playing now in the Seattle area, Are you seeing sort of like the same things I'm seeing in Portland, where people in the crowds are starting to finally kind of come back after COVID?
I would say they are. Venues close, venues open, establishments change hands. You just have to find out where those spots are. And that's what I do now in Seattle is I go to an open mic every week because I want to play all different styles of music. And I got a band that rehearses on Wednesday night, and that's all we do. We rehearse music that we're going to play for the open mic jam. It's a 15-minute set, 3 tunes. And we knock it out in an hour, 2 hours in a rehearsal. We've got our program so that when we get on stage, man, we're not fumbling through. We're knocking it down. We play our 50 minutes. We play, we kick ass, and we get off. And that's they love that when you do that. I mean, that's pro style musicianship, if you ask me. And I love to see all the talent that comes out because, oh my goodness, there's so many talented people in the world. If you just give them a chance on the stage, you're going to see a lot of great stuff. What about you, Dave?
No, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I go to Seattle occasionally, and when I see Tommy up there with his band members playing, and yeah, they steal the show, but the others that come up just as talented and young too, not just the gray hair, but young and vibrant players
like Andrew.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, Andrew.
And then in terms of like the venue piece, right? I'm curious from your perspective as somebody who plays saxophone, what is it that a venue could keep in mind in order to make sure that they have room for the best sound for a saxophone player on stage?
Wow. That's a question I've never heard. And that's a great one because I think that when club owners set up their sound system, they're probably not thinking about horns as much as they are guitars, bass, drums, and keys, which they should, because that's the foundation for most club bands. But for somebody that owns an establishment where they do want to hear horns, you're going to have the equipment to do that, especially in an open mic jam or something like that, and it's cost. I mean, we're working with a club right now in Shoreline, where they've changed hands. It was used to be known as the Hidden Door, and the group that I play with for the open, we call ourselves the Hidden Door Mafia. I'm the consigliere, and they changed hands, and they're now called 1928 Tap Room and Grill / Karaoke. Interesting name, but they've really upgraded the establishment to where music can really be supported well. They just need to acquire the necessary equipment to support that. But the food there is great. The owners are great. The family that runs it now, they're great. It's in a decent spot just north of the Seattle city limits, right in Shoreline there. So it's accessible for me living in Linwood. Yeah.
And the reason I bring this up is another one of those things where I'll stop bringing it up when I stop seeing the same thing over and over again, because venues really need to look at this as a partnership with musicians. And you get some venues that are sort of exploitive in nature, but in the reality is what you can do to your venue to make the music sound better is going to attract better bands. And when you attract better bands, it attracts better crowd. And it's a win-win all the way around if you just pay a little bit more attention to the sound coming out of your venue.
And I think that a lot of club owners don't even have the time to consider that because of the other issues they have to deal with as a business owner.
100%.
Yeah.
You almost need a separate person just dedicated to the sound piece. Because you're right. There's so much. Like, I used to work at the Restaurant Association, and I know a lot of restaurant owners, and it's a 7-day, 10-hour day job where they have all of these other things to worry about. And so to add one more thing is hard. At the same time, like, if you could pay attention to that one thing for just a second and a little on the front end, will help you in your bottom line, will help you as you move forward.
Well, you gotta ask yourself, who's supporting these establishments? A lot of them are musicians, and they come to see other musicians. So you kind of have a built-in crowd when you think about it.
100%. And I know like the venue that I love the most in Portland is the Mekong Bistro.
Right.
I know a lot of musicians that play there just because they saw somebody else there first.
Right.
And it's like, because you have this saturation in the market of venues, it's like sometimes it's hard to choose which one.
Mm.
And if you go to one, you're like, oh, this sound is awesome. This
Right.
looks awesome. Like, I want to play here. It leads to people coming, oh, yeah, let's play here.
And
Yeah.
you pick that up when you play in different establishments in whatever area you're at. You find where the good spots are and where the ones that maybe they don't support the music as much as you'd like them to. But the point in all of that is really having live music available any night of the week for anybody that wants to come out and listen to live music. I mean, especially at post-pandemic where everybody was just starving for something to do instead of being cooped up in their houses. Yeah.
And then in terms of like the last question I'll sort of ask, in terms of the live performance piece, because one of the things that I appreciate about musicians is that nonverbal communication while on stage. Was that something you all picked up over time, or was that something that sort of came to you naturally?
Tommy, I'm going to defer to you on that because I don't do verbal communication, and nonverbal communication to me is the eyesight. I'm not looking over the heads of the audience. I'm looking at their eyes. What do you say?
Oh, yeah. You got to make eye contact with whoever you're playing with on stage at some point, if only to acknowledge the applause. You know, a lot of cats, they like to play with their eyes closed. I know I do, but I'm taking a peek here and there when I'm playing, you know, especially if I'm grooving really good. I want to see, hey, are they digging this as much as I am? So yeah. What was the question again?
Like, how did you pick up that nonverbal between bandmates on
When you're
stage?
playing with a band, you know, you're hoping that everything goes as well as you rehearsed it. But because music is organic and you never know what's going to happen, you know, you have to have nonverbal cues to help know when a solo is going to end, when another guy's going to take the solo, you know. So I think that's a culmination of the beginning, middle, and end of your journey. Is you're constantly learning and listening and looking for those clues, for those cues that you can see from other band members. Some are really good at giving cues, some suck at it, and you just don't know where the hell you are, and you just try to help. You know, you just try to be a part of that ensemble.
So it's a privilege being here with you today. Thank you very much for including me in this podcast. And I will say, see you later.
You got it.
Thank you, Davey.
And then the other question actually that kind of comes to mind then, in terms of like you as a saxophone player on stage, when you're playing, do you rely more on the drummer or the bass player to keep time?
Oh, you saved the toughest question for last. Way to go, Sean Sullivan. So I'm going to piss off a lot of drummers here, but it's always the bass player. I'm following the bass player for the tempo, for the time, for the vibe. I'm hoping that the drummer will meld with the bass player and be a unit so that they're in sync, in lock. And it's amazing how many times that conflict is there, you know? But I'm listening for that low end, not only when I'm soloing, but as I'm playing ensemble parts and horn parts, so that I'm in the pocket. I'm in that niche with the horn, and it's crisp. It's like lettuce. It's tight. TOP tight. That's Tower Power.
Yeah. And then the most important question of all, where can people go to find you and your music?
Well, there's a couple places. You can find me on Marvin Glover's music through Spotify. He's got 2 albums up there. The first is One, and the second album is Muse. And I've got a few tracks on both of those. I've also recorded with the big fellas out of San Diego, California through Marvin and his Starving Dog Records company. And I recorded, I think, 3 or 4 songs on their album Chubbed Up. And it's a smiley face cookie smoking a doob.
Love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. And that's, who's the guy that does that? Rexick. Charles Rexick is his name, and he's the piano player and songwriter for Big Fellas. And he is crisply talented, just a dynamic performer and songwriter. And it was so wonderful to have that opportunity to play with big fellas, because the music that they chose me to record on with them was just in my wheelhouse. And I just had that was one take Tommy pretty much for that session. I only took about 2 hours to lay down my tracks for 4 songs. So yeah.
And then you are that open mic. Where is that?
I do the open mics.
Yeah.
I do, the first and third Wednesdays of the month, at a place called Daryl's Tavern in Shoreline, just right there at 145th and Highway 99. And then I also go to the second and fourth Thursdays of the month at a place called Wits End in Finney Ridge, there on Finney Avenue North. I think it's 6510 Finney Avenue North. Wow, how did I remember that? Yeah. So I'm there 4 nights a week, and I gig when gigs are made available to me. People can call me up for gigs. I'm available. I'm on Facebook, and I don't think I'm on Instagram, but I'm definitely on Facebook. I have a presence there.
And spell your last name for folks.
Absolutely. And here's how I spell my name. It's Prigmore, capital P as in Paul, R-I-G as in girl, M as in Mary, O-R-E as in Edward, Prigmore.
Thank you, Tommy.
And Sean, can I just say thank you so much, sir, for allowing me to do this interview with you here in Bend, Oregon at my brother's house.
This is a sanctuary.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a haven of peace and serenity that I cherish every time I come here.
Yeah, and the minute I walked in here, I was like, this has got to be where we record.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I also wanted
self-sufficiency. Like, what's her name that owns the house here?
Corey Langley.
Yeah. Beautiful place.
Yes, she has a beautiful presence here. And I also wanted to extend my thanks to Becca, your girlfriend, for being here on the trip too.
She's great, isn't she?
She's awesome.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
She's a fan of Tool.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to say there's 3 people on my bucket list for podcast interviews.
Oh, gotta get Tool, man.
Maynard is number 1. Henry Rollins is number 2.
Oh, yeah.
And actually number 3 is Lisa Mann.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
all great ones.
All great.
We got to see how we can make that happen for you.
We'll see. Like, I doubt Maynard will ever come to fruition. Yeah, he's kind of a recluse kind of guy that doesn't like to do interviews too much.
And those are the ones that just sort of happen to fall in your lap when you least expect it.
That's true. Yeah.
It's that brass ring around the carousel.
Yeah. So fingers crossed. Someday. Yeah. And I'll end the podcast the way I always end the podcast, folks. Be kind. We all live on the same planet. We breathe the same air. And this world would be just a little bit better if we treated everybody with a little kindness and respect. Tommy, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Amen.